Good afternoon, everyone. I'm calling to order this meeting of the Cleveland Heights City Council Housing and Building meeting at 5:03 p.m. on Tuesday, June 25th. Clerk Ballister, if you wouldn't mind, could you call the roll?
Petrus.
Here.
Larson. Here. Maddox.
And Councilman Maddox emailed us earlier today letting us know that he would not be able to join us. Just wanted to note that we also have Council President Kuda, Councilman Posh, and Cobb with us. We also have the Mayor with us, Director Zan, and Director Butler. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us. So on our agenda today, we have a few items. The first is an update on the Western Reserve Property Survey. So Director Zanford, Director Butler.
Yeah, so I can give you an update on that. We have received the data from the survey back in the PDF form. And Western Reserve Land Conservancy is processing their storyboard map for that. There is a meeting set up that may get moved, but it's set up for later on this week to review that data and their storyboard and give any feedback to them before a presentation is made to council.
Okay.
So they're real close on getting the data. I want to say that they're going to and do some correlations between the cities that had the process together. So Euclid, South Euclid, and Cleveland Heights, to see if there's any correlations between them.
Okay.
It's pretty close.
I know that in the city of Cleveland, for example, they have this really cool online tool. Are our thoughts that we might have something like that, or are we planning to just use it internally?
So, I think whatever the data that comes out of it and the storyboard that comes out of it, what I've seen, it is an interactive map. So you can click on each parcel to view, see what the result was of the survey. And I believe that, it'll be made to the public if we all choose to do that. I want to say that the data is also stored in NeoCanDo in the NST website. So if you have access to that, you can pull out whatever data you need and sort it and manipulate it.
If you don't, I encourage you to get access to that. It's a very useful tool.
Any questions for Mr. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I would like to know, once you have the data and you can take a look at neighborhoods, will you use that to kind of do a strategic plan for targeting the neighborhoods who have the most blight in them?
For sure. That's the whole reason behind doing the survey, right? To get a baseline, to evaluate it from a unbiased perspective, if you will, right? And then tackle those properties that have a poor local grade on them or some other question that was answered that draws a red flag.
Will it reflect whether there's a housing case on that particular property?
It won't.
Okay.
So there's that data wasn't included in it.
Okay.
So we'd have to mesh it with our own database and figure out if there were already a case or a violation notice sent out to the owner.
I will say from the Greater Cleveland Congregations group that worked on this inventory in the years past, we're very grateful that you did do this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, well, you're welcome. And I think the initial survey I helped to fund in a previous position as well. And for some reason, I'm not sure why Cleveland Heights didn't take advantage of that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we weren't included in that other inter-ring survey they did. I'm not positive.
We're doing it now.
Right.
Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you so much for that update. Really appreciate it. And so the next item on the agenda is an overview of residential properties controlled by the city of Cleveland Heights.
So I have a short presentation.
Okay.
And this is a similar presentation we've given in the past. So we have about 280 city-owned properties in the city, and about 70 of those are civic uses, parks, city hall, fire stations, parking lots. Some of them are already targeted for redevelopment or under development. And then we have community gardens and other sort of spaces out there. That leads to about 240 or so city-owned properties that are either with a structure on them or vacant that have the potential to be redeveloped. And this is not something that's uncommon, particularly in the Rust Belt, of having a lot of properties that once had structures on them. It's just sort of being a post-industrial city. It's part of a lifetime. A lot of cities have been successful in redeveloping these.
For clarification, is that 240 properties that have a structure or no structure?
Correct.
Okay,
Both.
and about what's the breakdown of structure versus no structure?
You'll see in
Okay.
a separate slide. So what we did, the staff working with the mayor, I'd say we've been doing this for the past 2 years now. And working with law is, first of all, we tried to make sure our inventory was up to date, which is of course very important. And then we went parcel by parcel and we tried to come up with outcomes of what made sense for each of those parcels. So for example, level 1, remove those city uses, large mixed-use projects, future homes, already allocated side lots, parks and existing community gardens. Those are off the table. Remove lots that have already been identified for green space or parking. There's a couple of those out there. Identify lots to offer to adjacent property owners. What do we mean by that? We have some lots that are 2 feet wide by 40 feet long. They're not developable, so they should just be offered to the person adjacent. We've got some clusters of lots, so even within our residential districts, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 lots together, and those might make sense for a larger development. And then the rest of the lots. So what that amounted to is we've got, out of the 240, about 180 of them should be for infill housing and redevelopment, whereas about 18 of those have structures on them. So we have a dashboard, which I think we've made available in the past. We can make it available again here, but just to show you, see how this works. It shows those outcomes and breaks it down, but you can zoom in and say, hey, this parcel is Baker Square. So that's definitely a development site somehow, some way, as an example. And you can just see throughout, we've identified some sites that make sense as green space or conservation space. And we've done that for all of those 240 within the city. That doesn't mean that almost every day we don't get inquiries from people who are interested in our rights, whether it's adjacent property owners, just residents in general, or people from outside of the city, even just builders and developers. That can be a random person saying, hey, I'd like to build a house in Cleveland Heights because I want to move there. And we've been keeping that sort of running list. But what's challenged us in the past is, so how do we get there? How do we get those properties to the people who want to redevelop them? We have a side lot program, which doesn't really work that well.
You know why it doesn't work that well?
So the side lot program says that the 2 adjacent property owners have the ability to bid on a property.
Okay.
And often what happens is that they both, very often is it uncontested. So it becomes a sort of a little bit of a political quagmire. And, actually, Mr. Chair, if I could add a little bit to that. Additionally, for long-term goals, we know for a couple different reasons, we don't have enough housing. That's just a flat out fact. For certain things, we don't have enough housing to meet demand, which means that prices are more difficult for people. New first-time home buyers are sharply down. Additionally, we've got homelessness issues and housing insecurity issues that a larger supply of housing would assist with. And we've got a problem with density in that we don't have enough of it. And although green space is a wonderful thing, it is, and it has benefits, and we need that as well.
a city like Cleveland Heights shouldn't be at 45,000 people. And B, I think the other thing is that we have artificially, especially these lots are a great example of that. We have artificially, as a result of what I would say banking misbehavior primarily, have artificially decreased our housing supply through the houses that we knocked down with the $50 million that the county gave us, all of that stuff, not just us. But, so that's another reason why not just the process of it doesn't work, but the result doesn't necessarily meet our needs.
We also have tried the RFQ route, which is how we had the Caledonia and DeSoto projects, which have not been as successful as we would have liked them to be. We have the one-offs.
So for those two programs, did the city just identify like a number of lots and then put that out for bid?
So out of the 240 or whatever the number was at the time, we identified a certain number that we were going to put out there.
Okay.
Which again was a choice made at the time, but not necessarily where the interest was. So if our interest is building homes, it doesn't always have to be located in only the city. Like we should be able to do both things at the same time.
But the staff identified those lots
Yeah.
for those two programs.
And I think probably council was involved in that.
I was not. So if council was, I was excluded from that discussion.
It was before my time. Large mixed use projects, obviously like Top of the Hill, Sugarland Meadowbrook, Taylor Tudor, those are one-offs. Those we either do through RFP, RFQ, or through a direct agreement, which the mayor brings forward. Neighborhood stabilization program, which was really successful in 2008, primarily that took down buildings that were struggling through the subprime mortgage crisis, but there were some spaces and homes that were built. And then we did have a vacant lot program back in the early 2000s, which had varying degrees of success. And here's our current city regulations. It's chapter 110, which essentially says mayor, side lot program, and law asked us to point this out in the last bullet point in section 11004, a different procedure. Like council has the ability to adopt an ordinance to do something different. You'll see in here, we've got our city land bank and also the CIC. So these are all different ways to dispose of property, but there are a lot of other different ways. What we're planning on doing here in the next few weeks is issue a request of expressions of interest for RFPI for the properties that have structures on them, because we know that those, we've heard from some of you, those are the properties that are in the most danger. We think that all of those have the ability to be salvaged if we can get somebody there to rehab those properties before it's too late. So we want to get that out. And that's not a level of an RFP or an RFQ. It's saying, are you interested at all? Give us some broad general qualifications and ideas of what you want to do with it. But it's not a big investment by the person. And then it'll give us the ability, to vet those and then obviously bring those forward at a certain point in time.
Am I remembering that there were about 18 of those? Okay.
And then for the other properties, the vacant infill properties, we also want to do that as well. But that's going to take a little more time because we want to make sure that we're getting the properties right, some of our outcomes right. And then on a rolling basis, we'll start to bring those forward to you. We also are issuing this RFP hopefully pretty soon for a Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Plan, which part of that is to identify some of these parcels for parks, open space, and conservation areas. So we want to make sure that that's reflected in the RFEI. And obviously the CIC is one of the tools that we felt is important, but we didn't want to wait for the CIC to get up and running to not go out and get interest. So that's sort of our update for right now. Obviously, we'll keep you apprised as council and as the committee as we start to go through that RFEI and RFP process.
Any questions for Director Zamp? Yep, absolutely.
Maybe this isn't the time, I don't know, but I get questions from folks at Future Heights about what the city's plan is in terms of getting some houses to them for a redevelopment. is there any update on Startright and properties that will be available to them? Or are we still working off of the original list of properties? I think it may have been 10 homes.
I believe the law department has sent a letter to Startright terminating that contract.
Okay,
They've got, as the contract stands, the requirements of the contract indicated that the 3 parcels that were transferred to them initially, they will be able to maintain ownership of those. The 2 parcels that have not yet been built on, they'll be able to build on those lots, and we will continue to have discussion with them. I had a conversation with Jimmy Hicks III relatively recently. We're gonna continue having a discussion about what a future agreement between the city and Startright might look like, because that agreement was not working.
and I think we may have also allocated some ARPA monies for them to rehabilitate homes. Do we know, were they anticipating getting those homes through the city?
I know generally
Or
they've been successful at getting homes through the county land,
Okay,
and those they have repeatedly received. Some of them, I believe they maintained ownership at least for some period of time and had tenants. Others they may have disposed of in other ways.
And we will intentionally send both RFEIs to bolster the I think we said this all along. The intention here is not to exclude the CDCs. We want them to participate in this process and give them the ability to express interest. And you might decide that they're the perfect organization to move forward with X, Y, and Z property. With Future Heights, given their change in leadership or evolving leadership, I know that's part of the reason why we've held off moving forward with them, but we do have a meeting coming up to sort of explore with them what their game plan is. I know they have a time frame to hire an executive director, so I think when we understand more of that, we'll be able to vet them and get them, properties as appropriate.
okay, thanks for the update.
So I could be mistaken, I don't have it up in front of me, but am I remembering that there were some ARPA dollars allocated to Startright for some of the new construction homes as well?
Yeah, so for both Starright and Future Heights, there's housing related funding, rehab and new construction, and those, we're waiting to have these discussions to fully vet them on how that makes sense.
And we're taking that out of ARPA. That's the other, we've had that discussion. That's no longer going to be ARPA funded. Right, does everybody remember this?
Can you explain that?
So,
Just in case.
because of the riskiness of housing projects and ARPA funding, and the fact that these things are designed to have things like program income, which complicate the ARPA question. What we are going to be providing to council is a reallocation away from these housing programs into basically basic government salaries, so that we can use ARPA as revenue replacement for a certain amount of money. And then that will allow us a variety of,
Flexibility.
Completely, time flexibility, purpose flexibility a bit. We can move forward with those housing programs on a timeline that is a bit more digestible for the organizations themselves, because giving people a big pot of money and telling them to go do something good with it in a very small period of time is a recipe for mistake. So this will allow us to have a longer runway and a bit less concern about the federal government clawing back money that we've possibly spent poorly given the time frame.
Thank you. Yes.
Anything cooking with infill housing contracts with, anybody interested in building homes in Cleveland Heights?
Lots of
There's a
people
lot
are
of
interested.
From the outside.
Absolutely. And so we wanted to make this a public, quote unquote, public process. We could have taken the approach of just bringing 5, 6, 10, different
So you don't have anything you wanna say now, but
We don't wanna share
Okay.
it just yet.
what are you, superstitious?
So this is one of those occasions when, when we're having conversations, generally you wanna have those conversations until they get to a point of ripeness where you can, expose those plans to, full scrutiny, have a full conversation, but it has to get to that point first.
So the RFEI, that's going out in July? Is that, and then do we think that we might hear back or we might set a deadline of like 30, 60 days, something like that?
And it'll also be rolling because I think, we wanna make sure that if somebody hears about it in September, they can still say, I'm interested in certain properties. Those properties might already be allocated, but we don't wanna have it too short of a window so that some people who are coming a little bit late to the game don't have that opportunity.
Any other questions? Yes?
I'm looking at the last ARPA approved projects and I just, again, new guy at the table, just trying to get a better sense of what's going on. We have 4 items here, the Cleveland Heights Improvement Corp., the Future Homes and Revitalization Program, Good Neighbor Project, Home Rehab, and the Caledonia Homes Infill.
Yeah, Caledonia Homes Infill and the Good Neighbor is Start Right. Future Homes was Future Heights, the CIC is the Start.
So the plan is to take those monies and deploy them elsewhere.
At least for the,
So the idea is basically to do a swap, and sort of reverse the decision to directly fund those things through ARPA and instead fund some basic general fund uses using that ARPA dollar. And then we would take a general fund dollar and fund the housing program.
Got it.
So allows us more flexibility.
So those programs would still be
Still
funded,
be
just
funded.
just differently.
Just differently,
Yeah.
okay.
And, sorry, in the case of the Caledonia project, that's pending more discussions, right? Am I hearing that that amount might be different, knowing that the contract is terminated?
No, our intention is to fund the projects in the amounts that council funded them, with the potential exception of some adjustments that needed to be made because there were certain other programs that the eligible uses had to be adjusted in negotiation through that contracting process with the nonprofits. But for these projects, we know that council had a particular intention, and so we're going to do our best to follow through on that intention.
Any other questions on this topic? Okay, thank you so much. This was a wonderful presentation. This was so informative for me, so I really appreciate it and look forward to seeing some of these things that you told us about today. So the last thing on the agenda, if we were able to get an update on the Community Improvement Corporation, that would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, so the only thing, I think I've probably already said this in the last conversation that we've had, it is always my intention to find the absolute best of the best that I can find. I am never of a mind to put out a call for applicants and say, well, we've got 5 openings, we got 5 applications, we're good. I've seen that happen many times. It's disappointing every time. It takes a lot more work to find people who really have the types of skills that I think we'll need to have a success right out the gate. I don't want to waste time on the back end by not taking time on the front end. So right now I've got probably about 3 people that I believe are willing, capable, of providing a great deal of value to the city of Cleveland Heights through service on that nonprofit board. There were some people who fell through, unfortunately. They would have been great. And so I'm continuing to look. Now, it was my intention to put together a suite of 5 community members all together, but I'm sensing this frustration among council for some reason. I'm not sure why, given the amount of years that the CIC has been in place, and the lack of use. I think getting it right means taking some time to get it right. But I can sense your frustration. And so I'm going to be sensitive to it. And I'm going to be looking forward to, sort of in a more piecemeal way than I initially anticipated, providing you with names to consider for appointment to the board of the CIC.
Would you consider, if we had somebody, would you like us to forward names to you?
If you have anybody that you think would be qualified and interested, please ask them to apply.
And is it a separate portal?
There's an application, in fact, if you go to the city's website and you find yourself at the mayor's section of the web page, or website rather, you can, actually just on the menu, if you open up the menu, government, Mayor Khalil Sarin, at the bottom there's mayoral boards and commissions application. At that application, you can fill in the information and you can select all of the boards that you wish to be considered for.
Yeah, I know that one. Okay, so that's the one I'm familiar with.
Please do point everybody in my direction who's in there.
Questions for the mayor? Thank you so much for that. I really appreciate your willingness to share with us that you are working hard to identify folks and that you've identified 3 and may share those with us soon.
It's an interesting collection of skills that I'm looking for. Things that I'm looking for are obviously development-related skills, legal, things related to both community and economic development, because this is a particular kind of organization that is, I think, unlike other organizations that cities have started, in that we're trying to best of both worlds this. So, I think the collection of people will need to have enough expertise in these areas to contribute something and not just be, a filled seat.
Understandable. Thank you so much. Thank you, Director Zamp, Director Butler, for coming. This has been very helpful and informative to me, and so I really appreciate it. Yes.
I do have a question for Director Butler while he's here. We were talking about the lead-safe legislation and that this current year we're in is Zone 1, targeting those rental units in Zone 1. Do you have a sense of when Zone 2 will be starting to get a rollout?
So I wanna say we did it on a yearly basis, so every year we do another zone. And I think as we get, if we look for more funding and opportunities for funding, right, that can expand a little bit further. But as we target it and roll it out, right, there's gonna be some challenges. We've already seen some of them here already, processing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would assume that it's gonna be on a yearly basis, that we reach out to that other geography of houses that need it.
Thank you.
If I could follow up on that, how do you feel about the progress that's being made? I know that there were some payment issues, but just in terms of the number of tests that are being done, do you feel good about that? Do you think that we're on track to complete the zone within the year? I just don't have a sense of where we are with that.
Yeah, so I think it's gonna be difficult to forecast right now.
Okay.
We are doing we're using the funds we have to incentivize, owners to come in and get that reimbursed then. So there is that incentive to have it done. I think we have the opportunity to keep on track and to make it work. The ones that don't, we'll have to figure out what enforcement we're gonna use to encourage them to get it done. But yeah, I think it's possible.
Okay.
Right, especially with the opportunities we have for additional funding, incentives, and those types of grant opportunities.
Okay, great. Okay, oh, yes.
You do have the $1 million in ARPA.
Great.
So just a couple more things before we adjourn. So Our next committee meeting is Tuesday, August 13th. So during that meeting, we're going to continue the discussion about tenants' rights and responsibilities with the Legal Aid Society. And then we are also going to revisit the Racial Justice Task Force recommendations. So as a reminder, I met with Director Hanna and Director Zamp, and Director Zamp noted that some of the things we might be able to do in-house and they may not require legislation. And so we talked through an approach where we might address a couple of the recommendations in each meeting. So our intention is that in the August meeting, we'll start that. So maybe we'll be able to discuss one or two of the things that were recommended at that time. Also, Davita Russell, Councilwoman Davita Russell and the Legal Aid Society are hosting a clinic on June 29th. It is 9 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. My understanding is that it was originally planned for the Noble Library, but that it has been relocated to the Lee Road location. And so there are going to be a number of lawyers on site who will be able to talk with folks about issues that they've encountered. Finally, our committee members received an email this week from Mr. Greenberg, who lives near Boulevard Elementary, and he is interested in taking a walking tour with our committee. And so I shared with him that if we have more than one person on the tour, then we're going to have to talk with the law department to figure out how we might be able to accommodate that. But I said that I would, during this meeting, reach out to the committee members and see who might be interested. So Councilwoman Larson, is this something that you might be interested in doing?
Yes, I communicated with him a few months back when the weather was nasty, so we both decided that we'd rather wait till it got nicer, so yes.
Okay, and Patty, if you wouldn't mind, could you reach out to Councilman Maddox and see if he is
Yeah.
interested?
I can ask.
And then once we know how many people would like to do it, then we could reach out to Director Hanna and see how
Okay.
he would advise us to handle it.
Sounds good.
Anything else before we adjourn? Okay, so I am going to adjourn this meeting at 5:35. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.